Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann. I'm joined on the panel today via Zoom with Ms. Cynthia Stevens and Ms. Valerie Werhu. The assessment department personnel will be Mr. Travis Gretchen, and I see Mr. Gretchen has someone with him today. We'll deal with whether both should be sworn in toward the end of the introduction. The administrative personnel today is Mr. Zachary Mohan. To the Zoom participants of this hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you may leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence of an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after the applications have been heard. The board will then deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing 3 items on the list today, items 2, 7, and 8. Mr. Mohan, would you please affirm the assessor or both assessors if we're so requested, and the applicant's testimony?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Travis Gretchen.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And what your
My colleague Stephen Lobenstein.
Okay, I'll swear him in. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Stephen Lobenstein.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please stand. Please state your full name.
Howard Lindsay McCubbin.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thanks.
In the first matter we will be hearing today is the street address of 160 La Vérendrye here in Winnipeg. Of course, I note that there is a preliminary matter in that there's a request that the burden of proof be shifted pursuant to the provisions of the Manitoba Municipal Act. So, Mr. Gretchen, perhaps what I'll have you do is introduce the property with roll number, brief description, and then we'll move on to the allegation of non-cooperation. Okay?
Sure. So file number is 24-1535, roll number 0606-108-0000. Address is 160 La Vérendrye Street. Roll year 2025, reference date 2020, April 1st, 2023, with an assessed value of $244,000.
Okay, thank you. If you can please move then to the allegation of non-compliance and the evidence with respect to that.
Sure, I'll be doing the non-compliance portion for this property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lobenstein.
Yeah, so if we just turn to page 2, you can see the request for information. You can see that we have not received a response. Moving to the last few pages of the document. You can see on page 13, this is the letter they sent out. At the top, starting with an LP number, is the corresponding number with the mailer. Again, flipping to my page 17, you can see the tracking number is on this page. Moving down this page, you can see that there's a name that was associated with this, and it has a signature on it, which means it was delivered and received, along with the timestamp on my page 18 shows that the same tracking number, and it was also received, and the signature have occurred. So we know that this property, that the mailer was received, and it was not filled out and sent back.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, any questions with respect to the allegation of non-compliance?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Warhood, any questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Ms. Stevens, questions?
No questions, thank you.
I have a question with respect to the letter that was sent to Donald Puhatch at 29 Garnet Bay. Where does that address come from, Mr. Lovinson?
That would be the address that we have on file. So this is where we would be sending all the tax information.
Okay, thank you. And the signing page as provided by Canada Post, or perhaps I'll just ask you, that signing page with the looks like the Canada Post logo and a signature over top of it, that was provided by Canada Post?
That was provided by Canada Post, yes.
And there's a name under the signatory name Lillian or Lillian Puhatch. That's provided by Canada Post as well?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further. Mr. McCubbin, have you any evidence with respect to the allegation of non-compliance?
I don't, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then what we'll do is we'll take a short recess. The panel members will discuss how best to proceed and continue from there. So if we can have a short recess, please.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. It would the evidence discloses that a request was made pursuant to section 16 sub 1 of the Manitoba Municipal Act. The applicant or the recipient failed or refused to comply with that request for information, and therefore pursuant to section 53 sub 3 of the Manitoba Municipal Act, the burden of proof will be placed on the applicant, Mr. McCubbin, for all of the matters at issue with respect to this matter. The relief sought as well pursuant to section 54 will be applied should that become necessary as well. Okay, thank you. So, Mr. McCubbin, can you please proceed with your evidence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. File number 24-1535. I believe. We turn to page 2 of my brief, please. The property owner is Donald Puhatch, and the client is Donald Puhatch. Property address is 160 La Vérendrye Avenue, roll number 0606108080,000. The gross floor area is 2,730 square feet, and the leasable area is 2634 square feet. It's a one-story building. The original age is 1954. And the site area is 5117 square feet. The assessment year we're dealing with, Mr. Chairman, is 2025, and the reference date being April 1st, 2023. The current realty assessment for 2025 is $244,000, and we are requesting the assessment be reduced to $173,000. I can get the turn to page 4 of my brief, please. And just with respect to inspection, I did inspect the property on August 28th, and I spoke to both the tenant and the owner of the property. if you look at the photographs on page 6, Mr. Chairman, you will see the property in question. It's highlighted with the red dot. And the photograph below shows the front of the property. Moving to page 7, the subject property is located on the south side of La Vérendrye Street between Pache Avenue and Rue St. Joseph. The property is best described as a wood frame warehouse built in 1954. I might add that there has been no upgrades to this property since it was built, with the exception of some minor maintenance, including the roof, which was, I'm told, was replaced a few years ago. So the roof is very secure. It's currently used to repair vinyl products. The leasable area of the property, as I've said, is 2634 square feet. The property is below average condition for its age. The lighting is of the fluorescent type, and ceiling height is 12 feet. So it has a rather low ceiling height for an industrial building. The floor of this particular unit is below the grade of the storm sewer in the back lane. And my aerial photograph, Mr. Chairman, does not show where the drain is, but in the you will see it clearly marked in the assessor's briefs. It's more visible, but if you look at that red dot and you go to the back lane, about the center of the back lane, it doesn't show, but there's a storm sewer drain there. So when it drains, I'm told when it rains heavily, sorry, I'm told that the water does back up and come into the back of this unit, so that the property itself is low compared to the back lane. Subject site is rectangular in shape with a total site size is recorded by the Assessment and Taxation Department. I'll have you correct that. It says 14,823 square feet. It's actually 5,117 square feet. It's zone R2. And the land to building ratio is 1.87 to 1. Again, a negative factor for this property. It's below your typical sort of industrial land to building ratio, which runs about 3 to 1 on average. I suspect that the use has been grandfathered because it's zoned R2. The highest and best use, I believe, is continuance of its current use. This property will be valued by the income approach to value. So if you skip to page 11, Mr. Chairman. For purposes of this report, a rentable area of 2634 square feet is used. With respect to the discussion of market rent, the subject property has been valued by the Assessment and Taxation Department with an April 1st, 2023 potential market rent of $6.73 per square foot to the entire leasable area. There is a month-to-month lease in place, which is semi-gross. The annual rent is $13,200, which equates to $5.01 per square foot. The tenant is responsible for hydro and gas, and the owner pays the property taxes and the water. You should add the water in there. So it's a semi-gross rent of $5.01 per square foot. Based on a review of rents of similar properties and taking into consideration the month-to-month lease in place, a rate of $5.01 per square foot will be used, which is in actual fact higher than the owner would realize if he deducts taxes on the water to make it a truly net rent, a true net rent. The following table represents rents used to justify a square foot rate. It was very difficult to find, as it is with these smaller properties. single tenant buildings, comparables. They're generally owner occupied. But I've made an attempt to do so. In the table below, you'll see the net rent per square foot averaging running from a low of $3.75, and that is a month-to-month lease. It commenced in 2020 with leasable area of 1,600 square feet, and it's essentially no, that's not across the street. I'm sorry. It's essentially an Archibald Street. Second one is second lowest rent that I have there. Recorded is $4.99 per square foot. Again, a month-to-month lease for 3845 square feet. Building age is 1914, a very old building, and it shows. I should mention, Mr. Chairman, I neglected to put the photographs of my comparisons in my brief, but I do have rebuttal evidence with respect to the assessor's brief, and the rebuttal evidence essentially just shows the comparisons of both of our the comparisons that we both use. So that's essentially it. So you'll see the photographs later. 850 Marion, this is multi-tenant situation. You can see the ranges of rents there. And the relative ages, the comparisons. Durand Street is at 625, built in 1980, 2280 square feet. And 70 Durand, built in 1981, at $6.50 a square foot also. So we have an average, I'm not going to go through the entire set here, but we have an average of 587, Mr. Chairman, and a median of $6 a square foot. I must add that all of these properties, with the exception of the Main Street property, are superior to the subject property in terms of ceiling heights and construction and age, with the exception again of the Main Street property. So we feel square foot rent of $5.01 is represents fair market property. If I can skip to page 21, and the reason I'm doing that, Mr. Chairman, because we do agree with the vacancy allowance, we do agree with the shortfall rate, and we do agree with the non-recoverable expenses of 3%. So the only difference between the assessor and I is the rent and the capitalization rate. Page 21, you can see on the second paragraph, the capitalization ranges with the study are also subject to adjustments for site-specific factors such as age, location, low wall height, a low land-to-building ratio, or other additional risk factors. I might add, Mr. Chairman, that this property is not in an investment-grade property. It's in poor condition, even for its age. And speaking to the capitalization rate, maybe I can go to the photographs at the back of the property to, if I can get you to turn to page 31 of my presentation. You will see the relative condition, low ceiling heights, lighting, etc. in that unit. Page 32. in a different section of that unit. And finally, page 33, it has just a powder room. Altus did a capitalization rate study, and I'm not going to go through it in depth. You can see on page 21 the number of properties that we looked at and the relative capitalization rate garnered from those sales. So we have a median of 6.43, an average of 6.85, a minimum of 5.75, and a maximum of 8.68. I can turn your attention to page 22. As mentioned, this is a non-investment grade property, and we feel that a capitalization rate of no less than 7% would be appropriate for this property. So applying the rent and the allowances, the rent of $5.01 and the allowances that we do agree with the exception of the cap rate, applying our cap rate of 7%, we arrive at a value of $173,000 round. Brief. Page 26 gives you an idea of type of property. It's industrial warehouse. Its property use code is industrial warehouse, and see the legal description there. 27 shows us the building section only has one, and the main area is 2730 square feet gross floor area with a wall height of 12 feet. Overall year built is 1954. Page 28 shows the calculation by the income approach assessment department and the relevant documents that we were able to find in our file. Also, with respect to the non-compliance issue. Page 30, Mr. Chairman, you'll see that I have gotten an email from Mr. Kuhach, and with respect to the month-to-month lease, they pay their own electricity and gas, but not water, and he neglected to include they do not pay taxes also. And I've asked the board to reduce the value from 244,000 to 100. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gretchen, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple. If we turn to your page 11, for your rent comparables, I guess first, is there a reason why the addresses weren't supplied with the comparables?
Yes, generally, we're not providing the addresses. We would provide them to the assessor if they do ask, and some assessors do ask for the addresses before the hearing. It's a privacy issue, and so that's the reason why the addresses weren't supplied. But you will see in the rebuttal evidence, it's clear. You can, in some cases, you can see where the properties are located.
All right, and then would you agree that the age of your rent comparables is far superior to the subject?
Oh, yes, with the exception of
Your second one, Main Street.
the second one on Main Street, yes.
So there were no comparables available to you of the same age?
It was difficult to find comparables Yeah, similar to the subject property in the general vicinity. I like we like to stay in the general area of the subject property, so location can be a big adjustment to make, so instead of going far afield, stuck in some Boniface area.
Correct. And one other question here, regarding page 21 of your brief. Would you agree that your comparable properties are significantly larger than the subject?
Sorry?
Your properties that you used for your cap rates,
Yes,
would you agree that they're significantly larger than the subject?
yes, they are.
And
Yes,
that's
they
all.
are. It's
That's all my questions.
again, as I mentioned before, the smaller industrial properties are generally owner occupied and they don't trade on the market in terms of they're usually if they do sell, they're owner occupied, so we don't have any information with respect to rent or expenses. Yeah.
All right, thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Do you have any questions?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Ms. Stevens?
Just one regarding the cap rate. Would Mr. McKelvin, would smaller properties generally trade at a lower cap rate than some of the bigger ones?
It depends, Mr. Chairman. It depends on a lot of factors. In general, smaller properties, we don't see a lot of them trading, especially this size of property. But it depends on the condition of the property also. It depends on the condition and the location of the property. Ceiling heights have a big factor with respect to the usability of the property itself.
I guess what I was sort of thinking of is it smaller properties easier to sell than some of these larger properties that, you know, that are obviously going for a lot more money and have a lot more space?
Right. Good question. It may or may not be, depending on the condition and depending on the listing price or how much the owner thinks that their property is worth also. There are a number of factors. It may or may not be. I can't answer that question.
Okay, that's fine.
Certainty.
Yeah, okay, fine, that's fine. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. I've got a question with respect to your capitalization rate study as well at page 21.
Okay.
I'm looking at the table, and that's the table is self-explanatory.
Right.
The addresses with the selling price and the calculated cap rate. My concern is that the capitalization, I'm looking at paragraph 2 now, the capitalization ranges within the study are subject to adjustment for site-specific factors such as age, location, wall height, et cetera, Can you please identify, or are you able to identify which addresses of the 2, 4, 6, 8 that you have provided have been adjusted away from the usual calculations for the cap rates, that being using stabilized NOI and selling price?
Right. If I can enter my capitalization rate study as
We've seen the capitalization rate
Yeah.
study. I'm
Yeah.
just asking you to point out which, with respect to those properties cited
Right.
at page 21, what adjustments have been made? Because as I had understood capitalization rates,
Right.
they were simply a mathematical determination
yeah,
of net operating income and the relationship between that and the sale price.
right,
The other variances that might or might not be present in an adjustment are going to affect the capitalization.
right,
Can you tell me what they are?
right. With respect to that particular that particular paragraph, Mr. Chairman, I do believe that's referring to when comparing these capitalization of these properties to other properties, other industrial properties. So it's not specifically done to this. The subjects or the addresses that we calculated the capitalization rates on. I believe that's meant to be used as a guide when looking at comparing it to other properties.
Okay, my other question with respect to capitalization rates is that the city has cap rate of 6.7%. You have a cap rate of 7%.
Right.
With respect to your determination, 7% is the appropriate cap rate. And again, I'm looking at the page 21 selection of addresses.
Right.
How did you arrive at 7%?
I arrived at 7% essentially by inspecting the property, the location, and elements with respect to the subject property itself, comparing it to the capitalization rate study that we did, and making adjustments for those elements with respect to the subject property. I felt, as I've said before, Mr. Chairman, this is not an investment grade property. It's in poor condition for its age, so it would be driving a higher cap rate. You can see on page 22 of my presentation, some categories there, investment category, Class A, Class B, and you see the ranges. And then for non-investment grade property, which this would, which I categorize this property as, it's a 7.5% plus application. So I've taken my guide from that essentially.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Gretchen, your evidence, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We've already gone over my page one, or sorry, I guess we stopped before the property description, so I'll read that out. So there is one building on the property consisting of one premise. Our year built is 1954, and we have a 12-foot wall height. The land area is 5,117 square feet, and the leasable area is 2,634 square feet, giving us a land to plan ratio of 1.87. We've already covered the non-compliance. If we go to my page 3 and 4, you will see I've provided maps where they're showing the subject is located in North St. Boniface, a central area close to downtown. It's on La Vérendrye Street and off of Taché, close to Provencher Boulevard. So page 4 has another map just showing the location within the city. My pages 5 to 7 include some photos. So page 5, there's an overhead photo showing the building and the lot. Page 6, you'll see the building is situated at the front of the lot with parking and storage at the rear. And page 7 includes the front view of the property and building. Moving to my page 8, you will see my rent comparables. So my lease range, start dates range from 2018 to 2021. The lease terms range from 4 to 10 years. The leased areas are approximately 2,700 square feet to 5,000 square feet. My average wall heights range from 11 to 19 feet, with effective year built between 1960 and 1973. And the comparable rents range from $6.20 to $7.15. So page 9, you will see the workup for the property. Once again, the leasable area is 2,634. Our rent per square foot was $6.73 and a potential rent of $17,727. From here, you'll see the vacancy percentage was 3%, giving us an effective gross income of $17,195. Taking into account expenses at 3% and a $4 shortfall gives us a net operating income of $16,363. Capitalizing using a capitalization rate of 6.7%, we arrive at a rounded estimated value of $244,000. You'll see the summary on page 10. Page 11 includes our capitalization rates. So our capitalization rate again was 6.7%, which falls inside the city's 20 to 80th percentiles. Page 12 is just an excerpt from the Municipal Act. And we have covered pages 13 to 17, which included the income and expense mailer that was mailed out by the city, showing that it was received. So we did include the blank mailer that was sent out. And then already covered was the information from Canada Post. That concludes my presentation. I find the value of $244,000 to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask for the board to confirm this value. And I am now open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, questions?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Gretchen, if I can turn to page 5 of your presentation, please. Did you inspect the property, Mr. Gretchen?
I did not inspect the property.
Would you agree that if you look at the aerial photograph on page 5, you see a circle in the back lane? Would you agree that that's storm drainage?
I do see the circle. I can't say for sure it's a storm drain, but I mean, I'm going off of your word that you did inspect it and you saw a storm drain.
Yep. Turning to page 8. Any idea what the land to building ratio of these comparables are, Mr. Gretchen?
I do. I tried to use comparables with a low land plan resembling or being similar to the subject property. So my closest land to plan comparable would be 1353 Spruce with a land to plan of 2.3. And my comparable land to plans ranged from 2.3 to 6.8. 6.8 was kind of an outlier, but the remaining 3 were all around 3.
Okay, so they're all. Which one was 6.8? Sorry.
Fife.
Which
Oh,
one?
sorry, 1107 Fife.
1107. 6. Thank you. Are any of these properties multi-tenant situations?
Based on the information I have here, I'm not able to decipher if they are or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not certain based on the information.
Yeah.
I guess to add to that, the least square footages for these properties were also all significantly low. 2,800, 2,700, 5,000, and 4,560. So if in the event that there was multi-tenanted space, it would be pretty small spaces.
Okay. One last question with respect to the comparables. Would you agree that your comparables are in superior condition to the subject property?
The age, yes. I mean, even the age is pretty close. In terms of condition, as mentioned, I didn't inspect the subject property, so I can't entirely speak to that.
Okay. Those are all questions I have.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, have you any questions?
Just in regards to your rental comps, are all of, I'm not 100% sure about every one of these addresses are exactly where they're located in terms of zoning, etc. Are these all in industrial parks? Or are some of them?
They are all industrial building for industrial use, yes.
But are they in established industrial parks? Do you know? Like
Fife would be, I'm not certain on, I didn't map the
Okay.
industrial parks out when using my comparables.
Okay, because I was just trying to, in terms of comparing the subject property being in a with residential housing around it compared to whether any of these have that or if they're all have industry around them. You're not sure?
Olsby would be located near housing, but the exact location of it in terms of industrial park, I'm not sure.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warburton.
Just one question. These comparables here, are they multi-tenanted?
Howard had actually asked that as well, and I'm not certain. I did reference the low square footages, so my opinion would likely be no, but I don't have the information in front of me to say if there are multiple tenants in any of the buildings.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you.
And I don't have any questions at this point. Thank you. I believe that Mr. McCubbin indicated that he had some rebuttal evidence. Perhaps what we should do is have a look at it and then determine whether or not either we'll wait or its admissibility. So we can take a short recess, please. If you can forward the rebuttal evidence, please, to all the panel members and to the assessors.
Of course.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. The applicant has submitted some rebuttal evidence with respect to the properties that have been referred to in comparables. There's 14 pages that have been submitted. We have noted that the first 5 pages relate to comparable properties used by the Assessment and Taxation Department in their presentation. We think that's properly rebuttal evidence. The evidence subsequent to that, the pictures of the properties and mapping of them that was included in the applicant's evidence is not properly rebuttal evidence, and we won't be considering that. So, Mr. McCubbin, if you can restrict your comments, please, to the first 5 pages with respect to the pictures of the properties that were filed or that were referred to by the assessor.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we go to page 2, Mr. Chairman, you see, and referring to page 8 of the assessor's presentation, page 2 of the rebuttal brief shows the general location of that property in the neighborhood, 11075. And also the relative construction, which is looks like a big brick masonry construction, and its relative exterior condition. Of course, it doesn't show the interior condition, but that's for 11075. In regards to 979.5, you can see its relative location on page 3 in the neighborhood between Aberdeen and Redwood. And you can see the building itself also. Automotive service repair. Page 4 speaks to 668 Goldsby, the third rental comparison that the assessor used. You can see its relative Guess you can see its relative condition from the exterior photograph and its location within the neighborhood. And finally, 1353 Spruce. You can see the building itself. And it appears to be in a multi-tenant situation. That's at 715. And that's my rebuttal evidence, and I will speak to that in my summation, brief summation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gretchen, have you any questions?
I do not have any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Stevens, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Wareham, any questions?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. That concludes the evidence, but Mr. McCubbin, have you a summary?
Yeah, just a quick summary, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the subject property, it's an older industrial building with lower ceiling heights. It shows older than its relative age. I've inspected the property. You've seen the photographs at the back of my brief of the interior of the property. It has a very low land to building ratio. It does have a month-to-month rent on the subject property, on the property itself, which is semi-gross that I've used in my calculation. The properties that I've used, Mr. Chairman, in my workup, properties I've used for comparison purposes are all superior to the subject property, with the exception of Index 2. Applied a reasonable capitalization rate pursuant with the relative location, condition, and condition of the property itself. I believe this was model driven. The value by the city was obviously model driven and did not take into consideration the aspects of this property. I'm doing a site-specific valuation of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gretchen, any summary?
No summary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then we will conclude this matter and move on to the next matter on the docket, that being the street address of 44 Archibald Street. Similarly, I see that there is a preliminary matter with respect to burden of proof and the allegation of non-compliance. So perhaps Mr. Gretchen, if you would please, or Mr. Lobenstein, if you would introduce the property. I'm not sure who's going to be dealing with the allegation of non-compliance, but if you can introduce the property, please, and then move down to the down in the brief to the allegation of non-compliance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I'll start with the file number, file 24-1523, roll number 0605149800, address 44 Archibald Street, roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023, an assessed value of $621,000. On the bottom of page 1, you'll see the request for non-cooperation. On my page 2, you'll see request for information with no response received. Moving to the last few pages of my brief. Page 12 includes the income and expense mailer or letter that was mailed out by the city. Page 13 includes that tracking number starting with LP. Page 14, 15, and 16 include the blank mailer which was mailed out. And page 17, you will find the tracking information from Canada Post showing that the mailer was received and a signature or it was signed for. And on page 18, you will see the second piece from Canada Post showing the signature with the signee's name.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, have you any questions with respect to the allegation of non-compliance?
No, I don't.
Ms. Warhood, any questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Ms. Stevens?
No questions, thanks.
And I don't have any questions. Mr. McCubbin, have you any evidence with respect to the allegation of non-compliance?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Then perhaps what we'll do is take a short recess and determine our course of action. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. On the preliminary issue with respect to the allegation of non-compliance, the evidence has shown that a request was made pursuant to section 16 of the Municipal Assessment Act, that there was a failure or refusal to respond. Therefore, pursuant to section 53 sub 3 of the Municipal Assessment Act, the burden of proof will be shifted to the applicant, you, Mr. McCubbin, on this matter, and that after hearing the application, the relief under section 54 will apply. Okay. Thank you. Then, Mr. McCubbin, can you please present your evidence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property is 44 Archibald Street. The realty roll number is 06051498,000, and the file number is 24-1523. Turning to page 2 of my brief, the property owner is 60918 Manitoba Limited, and the client is Cushman Wakefield Stevenson. The gross floor area and leasable area of the property is 4,819 square feet. It's a one-story structure with an original age of 1983. The site area is 14,823 square feet. The assessment year we're dealing with, Mr. Chairman, is 2025, and reference date being April the 1st, 2023. The 2025 realty assessment currently stands at $621,000, and we're requesting that the assessment be reduced to $445,000. Respect inspection. If you turn to page 4, I did inspect this property on September the 3rd of this year. On page 6, you will see the aerial photograph. The top photograph is the aerial photograph of the subject property. It's a narrow, long lot. Its location is just south of the Marinova Pass. Yep. The photograph below shows the exterior of the building. It's being used as a car repair garage or automotive. I wouldn't call it an automotive center. They're just repairing cars. There's no spray booths or anything involved in this property. Turn to page 7. The subject property is located on the west side of Archibald Street, north of Mission Street. The property is best described as a metal frame storage warehouse. So it was built as a tantamount to a storage warehouse, metal frame, constructed in 1983. And I double its current use. The leasable area of the property is 4,819 square feet. It's heated by a forced air heat source. The subject site is rectangular in shape. As I mentioned, the total site size of 14,823 square feet. It's zoned industrial M3, heavy manufacturing. The highest and best use for the subject property is as it exists in its current use. Again, Mr. Chairman, we use the income approach to value with respect to valuing this property on a site-specific basis. I can turn your attention to page 11. Subject property has been valued by the Assessment and Taxation Department in April 1st, 2023, potential market rent of $7.87 a square foot. Applied to the entire leasable area. And based on a review of rents of similar properties, we'll be using a rent of $6.50 per square foot in our income summary. Schedule of rents you see below in the table. Can't do this with the last hearing, but just to reference it, it's averages $5.87 with a median of $6. The first comparison is essentially right across the street from the subject property, and it's a month-to-month lease situation at 375 square foot, and that effective age of the building is 1987. That's a multi-tenant situation. So it's a unit within that property. If I can turn your attention to page. Just to mention, Mr. Chairman, we're in agreement with the allowance, vacancy allowances and expenses used to drive the value for this property by the income approach used by the assessment department, sorry. So the only contention we have here today with the valuations, Chairman, is the rent used and the cap rate. Okay. If you turn to page 22, I should describe this property further before I get into the capitalization rate. If you can turn to page 30 of my presentation, Mr. Chairman, you can see a closer photograph of the subject property, the front of it. That's the access door. That's the only overhead door in the building itself. You see it's relative construction, steel frame and steel cladded building. Page 31 shows the relative condition of the building. There's some peeling of the inside installation. This building has been intensively used over the years. And again, this building shows it's in poor condition or below average condition for its age. Page 32, you can see another interior photograph. There's a mezzanine area that's not accessible on top of the office here, which you see below there with the doorway. That just houses the mechanicals for the heating. For heating of the building itself. And on page 33, you see at the back of the building the steel trusses, the steel roof trusses, and the relative condition of the building. There are a couple of hoists in the building. There's no sump pit. There's no with respect to oil changes and anything like that. So it's not similar to a service station per se. It's essentially a warehouse with a couple of hoists installed. used as a service garage. So. Regards to the capitalization rate, turn your attention to page 22. Again, I would consider this not an investment grade property. And it is in, it's in poor condition or below average condition for its age. I believe fair capitalization rate for this property would be 6.5. City has used 5.65%. So using our inputs with respect to the rent and the capitalization rate, we arrive at a value of $445,000 in total, rounded, Mr. Chairman. And this we feel it represents the site-specific valuation of the property. The property was the valuation was model-driven and didn't take into consideration aspects that I've discussed in regards to this property. And so I'm asking the board to lower the assessed value from $621,000 to $445,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gretchen. Questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We turn to your page 21. Would you agree that there's a higher risk associated with the properties of higher square footages, such as the ones used above for your cap rates?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? A higher.
Would you agree that there's higher risk associated with properties with higher square footages?
It depends on the tenancy situation. It depends on a number of factors. In general, there's a higher degree vacancy. If a single tenant building goes vacant, it's entirely vacant. And so no income is coming in. A multi-tenant situation, you can have tenants move in and out. So the relative size can and cannot have something to do with it. I guess if a 60,000 square foot building that's single tenant and being rented out, if you can't hang on to that tenant, if the owner can't hang on to that tenant, it goes dark. The owner is in trouble with respect to that aspect. I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question.
That's fine. In respect to that, though, would you agree that these properties are not similar to the subject due to their size?
Oh, yes, due to their size, yeah. They're not similar.
And lastly, you had mentioned the use of the building as a service garage.
Yes.
You did cover that it doesn't have the full utilities of a normal service garage, but would you agree that service garages generally do fetch a higher rent?
It depends on the amenities of the service garage. Like if it has a sump pit, the door situation, overhead door situation, a number of issues. And the service garages, they run the gamut, I guess, in sizes, but they're relatively only a few thousand square feet in size. Again, am I answering your question or I'm...
That's all my questions. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, questions?
No, I think my questions have been asked, so thank you.
Ms. Werman?
Mine also, thank you.
I have a question. Obviously, there's, as you said, a business running in here, a car. Is this owner occupied?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. Thank you, and I have nothing further. Mr. Gretchen, your evidence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've again already covered the top portion of my page one. I'll go down to the property description. So as mentioned, the property is listed as a storage warehouse. It is one building with one premise. The year built is 1983, and we have a 16-foot wall height. The land area is 14,823 square feet, and the leasable area is 4,819 square feet, giving us a land to plan of 3.08 ratio. We have covered the issue of non-compliance and the request for information. I do not have any recent sales history. You'll see on page 2. Page 3 includes, I guess page 3 and 4 includes maps. So you'll see the property is located in the northeast quadrant of the city on Archibald Street between Nairn and Provencher Boulevard. And page 4 provides a map showing the location within the city. Moving to my page 5 and 6, you'll find photos. So page 5 provides overhead photos showing the building and the lot. Moving to page 6, you'll see the building with the loading door is situated at the back of the lot with access off Archibald and parking and storage at the front. Moving to my page 7, my rent comparables are presented here. The lease start dates range from 2012 to 2022. I have lease terms between 1 year and 15 years. A leased area between or approximately between 3,100 square feet and 6,000 square feet. Average wall heights range from 12 to 18 feet. Effective year built between 1956 and 1973, and rents between $7.14 and $8.92. Moving to my page 8, you'll find the workup. So as mentioned, the leasable area is 4,819 square feet. We have a rent of $7.87 per square foot and a potential rent of $37,926. The vacancy is 3%, giving us an effective gross income of $36,788. With expenses at 3% and a shortfall of $4, we arrive at a net operating income of $35,106. The capitalization rate taken into effect is 565 or 5.65%, and that gives us a rounded value of $621,000. Page 9 includes the summary of that workup. Moving to page 10, you will find our capitalization rates. Our cap rate of 5.65% falls within our rates in the 20th to 80th percentile, as well as the rates from Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman & Wakefield. Page 11 again includes the excerpt from the Municipal Act. And pages 12 to 16 we have covered in terms of the income and expense mailer that was sent out but not received, or not received back by us, was received by them, which is shown page 17 and 18 from the Canada Post information. And that concludes my presentation. I again find the value of $621,000 to be fair and equitable, and would respectfully ask for the board to confirm this value. I am now open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCutcheon. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gretchen, the value by the income approach on page 8 of your presentation, is that model driven?
Yes, it is model driven.
Good. Okay. Did you have a chance to inspect this property?
I did not get a chance to inspect the property, no.
Which would be your best comparison, you would say on page 7 in relation to the subject property?
So all my comparables, the least area I took into account, so I was looking for smaller units. As mentioned, they did range between 3,100 and 6,000 square feet. And our subject property was 4,819 square feet. Wall height was also considered. We had a 16-foot wall height. My comparables ranged from 12 to 18 square feet. And effective year built, we had 1983 for our subject. My comparables were a bit more dated or older. Keenly side, 21 Keenly side would be the most similar property in terms of age, and that property is fetching a net rent of $8.92, whereas my rent was $7.87 for the subject property. In terms of square footage, that would also be, I guess, no, Fife and King Edward are also very similar in square footage. And you'll see my net rents are, in the range of my subject property. So all in all, I tried to select the most comparable or my best comparables for this property.
When you chose these rents, were you trying to justify the rent that was placed in the algorithm, the model, the 787?
No, my primary search for comparables, like I said, was based on a smaller size building. So I looked at leased area. We were looking for that, close to 16-foot wall height. So there were other comparables with, significantly higher wall heights, which I left out for that reason. And then the effective year built and location as best as we could.
Did you take into consideration the construction of the subject property when choosing the comparisons?
I did. So I did, as you mentioned, it is a steel frame warehouse. Comparables were pretty limited in terms of finding something similar to that. So as mentioned, I did go ahead using comparables that most closely resembled the majority of the factors of this building.
Fair enough. And just the question on page 8, the capitalization rate used, that's model driven also?
Correct. The capitalization rate is model driven.
Those are all the questions.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, questions?
Just on your capitalization chart, industrial B. So, well, they're pretty much, they're all the same, so it doesn't matter. But your cap rate is very, much on the low end, and I know this was model driven. Is that, in your opinion, what's in that regard to the size, the
Exactly.
location?
Yeah, you nailed it there. It's a smaller size building. So you will usually find the smaller size buildings with a lower cap rate just due to, and also as Mr. McCubbin had mentioned, the single tenant as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Werman. Any questions?
No, I had the same question, but thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Gretchen, about the rent comparable and the building use. Are any of your comparables being used in a similar manner as the subject property? Or is it just are the rent comparables based on the classification code for industrial warehouse?
All the comparables used were industrial buildings. I don't know that any of them are being used as a vehicle service garage in such manner that the subject property is being used.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Mr. McCubbin, any summary?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to rebuttal evidence, I believe if you look at the same rebuttal evidence presented, I should have broken it up, but.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that there was rebuttal evidence. I was
Sorry.
for this property as well.
Yes,
Okay.
with respect to the photographs, again, not my comparisons, but if it may assist the board in determining what the appropriate value for this property is. It shows the relative location of the comparisons used by the assessor and also street view photograph of such a property. And it's contained in the rebuttal evidence brief.
Is this the rebuttal evidence that we have already looked at that dealt with the 1107 Fife Street, 979 Fife Street, 668 Goldsby Street, and 1353 Spruce Street?
That is correct.
Okay, I note that the comparables as used by the assessment and taxation department here, though, are not those addresses for this property.
Yes, but contained in the same rebuttal brief, Mr. Chairman, beginning at page 11. And ending at the end of the rebuttal brief, they do contain the photographs and aerial photographs of the comparisons used by the city.
Oh, okay. Yes, I see it now. Have you got that, Mr. Assessor, Ms. Warhoon, Ms. Stevens? Starting at page 11.
Yeah, I've got it. Thanks.
I just need 1 minute to open it again.
Okay.
Okay, I have it open now.
Okay, please proceed, Mr. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So turning to page 7 of the assessor's brief, the first comparable, 545 King Edward Street is contained in page 11 of the rebuttal brief. You'll see the relative location of that property, Mr. Chairman, and the street view of the property and its relative condition to the subject property. Page 12 of my rebuttal speaks to 195 Watt Street, which is on page 7, second comparison on page 7 of the assessor's brief. You can see the location on Watt Street, the intersection of Chalmers, and you can see the relative condition of that property. Kinley side, Mr. Chairman. Appears as though it's a multi-tenant situation. It's on page 13 of my rebuttal brief. See the relative location of it, and you can see the building, the buildings that are contained within that development. They're all masonry constructed in much better condition than such a property. Page. The last page of the rebuttal brief, page 14, Mr. Chairman, is with respect to for comparison on page 7 of the assessor's brief, 1368 border. You can see the relative condition of the building and its relative location. And it appears as though it's a multi-tenant situation there. 1105, 11075, we've dealt with, you've seen the photographs. So that's my comments on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gretchen, have you any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Stevens, questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Wareham, questions?
None, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Now we'll get to the summary. Mr. McCubbin, have your summary?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have inspected this property, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you that again, this property is in below average condition for its age, although it was constructed in 1983. It shows like an older building. It's not maintained well. It's heavily used. That has to be taken into consideration when viewing cap rate for this type of property and also the rent for this type of property. The best comparison or the closest comparison to subject property is right across the street. It's a month-to-month situation. Smaller unit, mind you, 375 square foot. Right across from the subject property. And I'm asking the board to consider everything I've discussed with respect to the condition of this property and its location, and I'm asking the board to reduce the assessed value of the property from 621,000 to 440. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gretchen. Any summary?
No summation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then we'll proceed to, does anyone need a break before we proceed to the last matter? Now members, Mr. Assessor, Mr. Appleton?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Did you need a break? Did you need a break before we proceed to the next?
Maybe just 5. Could we have 5
Okay,
minutes?
5 minutes.
If I could just speak for 1 second, I think our last property, the agent will be asking for confirmation, so I think it would just be a read.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
well,
then I'm good.
then we'll take our 5 minutes after that. Okay, then if you can please introduce the last property, that being street address of 46 Archibald Street. I note as well that there is a preliminary matter here with respect to an allegation of non-cooperation or non-compliance. So similar to the previous properties, if you can please introduce it and then move down to the allegation of non-compliance.
Did you want me to read through the non-cooperation if we're seeking non-compliance or if we're seeking confirmation? Or if he's asking for confirmation? Because the value will essentially apply throughout with confirmation.
The value will apply throughout, subject to any appeal that's made to the municipal board.
Yeah, if he's asking for confirmation, we'd be confirming the value for both years, right?
Okay, then we can proceed.
Okay. So file number is 24-1524, roll number 0605149600. Address is 46 Archibald Street. Roll year is 2025. Reference date April 1st, 2023. And the assessed value is $673,000. And as mentioned, the agent did indicate he would be seeking confirmation on this.
That's correct.
Mr. McCubbin?
Yes, I'm seeking confirmation on the value of this property.
Just to be absolutely clear, the allegation of non-compliance, there's no contest to it, but the confirmation will be with respect to the 2 years for the assessed value until the next cycle.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. I sort of jumped in there, but do you have any questions, Ms. Stevens, with respect to this?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Warren, questions?
None, thank you.
Okay, and Mr. McCubbin, having heard your confirmation or request for confirmation, you don't have anything further?
No, I don't.
No summary required from either party?
No summary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Then we will conclude that matter, and having heard all of the matters today, we will adjourn this hearing. Thank you for your time, Mr. Gretchen, Mr. Globenstein, and Mr. McCubbin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Thank
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.